One thing I do that nobody else can do, I'm going to bring places like Michigan into play. Nobody else is going to win. Ted Cruz and Rubio, I think Rubio's out of it now, but Ted Cruz is not going to win Michigan.
I have never discussed dropping out with anyone on my team or anyone on the planet Earth. It is not going, or anyone on any planet for that matter. I am not dropping out of this race. We're going to be in this race through. We're going to fight this thing through Tuesday. We're going to win Florida, and we're going to go on.
Let's talk some real simple math. It takes 1,237 delegates to be the nominee. I have just over 300. Donald has about 80 more than I do. Both of us, we're within 80 delegates of each other.
It's really, really jammed and close. And, you know, I think anything is possible this year, Greta, that somebody could get there. It's possible, but probably not. But can you go to a convention and actually come out united? Absolutely.
All right. As you take a look at the polls that we had from Florida, another element to it that we didn't show you yesterday is already voted and yet to vote. And there you see Donald Trump still with a big lead over Marco Rubio in a must-win state for him of Florida. Just getting word from the Washington Post that Dr. Ben Carson is said to be ready to endorse Donald Trump, and that may happen as soon as tonight. Let's bring in our panel. Charles Lane, opinion writer for The Washington Post, editor-in-chief of Life Zet, Laura Ingram, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Laura, Dr. Carson possibly getting back into the fray. Does that mean anything?
That doesn't surprise me. They're old friends, and I thought when you notice the trajectory of their on-stage relationship during the debates, there was a lot of affection there, both Trump for Carson, Carson for Trump. It doesn't surprise me at all. I think there's a lot of support still for Ben Carson's demeanor, which is obviously a lot different from Donald Trump's demeanor. So I think a lot of people watching this will go like, wait a second, he's a strong Christian. He's so meek and respectful and gracious. And that's quite a difference from the guy that you're endorsing. But I think it maybe softens Trump a little bit for some people, and maybe on the margins helps him a little bit.
Charles.
I think it would take some steak tenderizer to soften Trump. I'm not sure that Carson is really that kind of ingredient. I think if you go back and you remember how Trump talked about Cruz, Lion Ted, stealing the Carson votes by accusing him of spreading the rumor that Carson was leaving, you could see the beginning of that a few weeks ago. So I think the premise was set. At the time, I suspect that Trump was tactically using Carson as a way to go after his main challenger, namely Cruz. But I think it's understandable. Outsiders, Carson has no particular affinity with the other candidates. I think it'll have zero effect, however. Whatever effect he was going to have on the race, Carson, already happened when he pulled out, and I think probably his vote split between Cruz and Trump.
So set the table, Chuck, for the debate tonight down in Florida.
Well, I think it's sort of the last chance Marco Rubio has to make an impression, or maybe make a new impression, for that matter, on his own home state voters who are already very familiar with him, which is another way of saying he has a very, very narrow opportunity here, if any. You know, that number you showed of Trump way ahead, even if you adjust down for the margin of error, way ahead among people who've already voted, must be devastating news to Marco Rubio. And notwithstanding the polls kind of drifting his way recently, he's really up against it. But I think, you know, we can expect him to try and really go after Donald Trump without, you know, lapsing into that kind of personal, childish stuff that did him so much harm.
Yeah, this is Rubio from the Kelly file last night, copping to not really liking that past couple weeks.
You got a little dirty on the campaign. You got a little naughty out on the campaign.
Yeah, well, look, first of all, that's not who I am. On the other stuff that has to do with personal stuff, you know, I'd do it differently. I really would. And the reason my kids were embarrassed by it, my wife didn't like it, I don't think it reflects good. That's not who I am. That's not what my campaign is going to be about or will ever be about again. Yeah, I'd do it differently. I would. On the personal stuff. I'm not telling you he didn't deserve it. I'm not telling you he didn't deserve it. But that's not who I am.
So, Laura, you think a change of tactic tonight?
I think a little bit. I mean, a week ago he told Savannah Guthrie on the Today Show they had no regrets about the personal stuff or the the policy differences, and I don't think any of it really mattered. He didn't look all that comfortable doing it. He looked a little frenetic when he was doing Trump to Trump. That didn't work for Rubio because Rubio's, has the boy wonder kind of image. You know, he's the policy guy. It's you know, America's the greatest country on the face of the earth. It's very positive. So that was an odd contrast. I think what people are missing about Rubio's decline are issues. If Rubio was the Rubio of 2010 when he ran and took down Charlie Crist and had thousands of people from across the country donating to his campaign, if that was the Rubio we saw today in this campaign, I think Rubio would be sitting in a very enviable position vis-a-vis the other candidates. But Rubio became more of a, you know, establishment, ruling class figure on the two issues that are really motivating voters. They certainly did in Michigan. I think they will in Ohio, trade and immigration. TPP and immigration, I think both of those substantive issues really in the end damaged him.
Yeah, the trade thing has come up, as we talked about the other night. I want to play this soundbite from CNN last night. This is Donald Trump on the issue of Islam.
I think Islam hates us. There's something there that there's a tremendous hatred there. There's a tremendous hatred. We have to get to the bottom of it. There is an unbelievable hatred of us.
In Islam itself?
You're going to have to figure that out.
The question is there a war between the West and radical Islam, or is there a war between the West and Islam itself?
It's radical, but it's very hard to define. It's very hard to separate.
Charles?
Well, if he got away unscathed with saying he wanted to ban all Muslims from entering the United States, he'll get away with this. But A, it's not helpful, and also he poses it as a question. I'm not exactly sure if it's Islam itself or it's not. But what does it even mean, Islam hates us? Islam and the West have had a 1,400-year relationship. Sometimes we're warm, sometimes we're not. So sometimes there were alliance of conveniences, sometimes there weren't. So I'm not sure it helps him. It's certainly not going to hurt him. If I could say a word about Rubio, if I were him, I would be regretting his regretting. He stepped all over his own story. There was no reason he had to back down. He simply could have said, I was having a good time, and now that's over, which is what Trump has been doing with great success. And second, don't forget, he attacked Trump in 2 debates in that personal way. In the first, it was successful and he put Trump back on his heels. In the second, it was unsuccessful. He went way overboard. So I think it's a wash. He shouldn't have stepped on his story. The story I saw this morning was Rubio regrets. It should be Rubio advocates X, Y, and Z, or Rubio says he's staying in the race or whatever. Regrets have not worked in this campaign. The one guy who has no regrets is way out ahead of everybody.
But Rubio, just one thing. Rubio has been behind in Florida for the entire campaign. I mean, there's never been 1 month since Trump's got in this race that Rubio's been leading, not that I'm aware of, in any poll ever. So we can talk about whether you insult or don't insult or whether you regret it, but in the end, the people of Florida know him pretty well, and he was beloved in Florida when he ran. So what happened between 2010 and 2016? To disabuse the notion of any substantive problem there, I think it does this a disservice.
What happened in this campaign, frankly, to Marco Rubio, was that the others tried to take him out early, and $30 million from Jeb Bush on Marco Rubio's head did not help in Florida. Chuck, final thing, John Kasich, can he still play this above the fray out as he's getting closer and closer and now leading in Ohio? Don't you think that somebody's going after him, namely Donald Trump?
Well, there's only so many people Donald Trump can attack at one time, and Kasich has kind of enjoyed, has sort of been able to kind of hide over here in the bushes, and he has not gone after Trump himself. And in fairness to Trump, I think you have to say a lot of the nasty things he said have been in retaliation.
Counterpunch.
Yeah, and Kasich has avoided that. You know, Florida and Ohio, and maybe even Illinois, which we haven't heard that much about, could be some kind of a, if they're not the end of it for the other candidates, a firewall against Trump. And I do believe Kasich, of all of them, has the best chance of holding his home state. And if it's a significant win in one of these, you know, white working class strongholds like Ohio, that could, you know, change the psychology of the campaign.
But why should Kasich attack Trump? He wants to be his running mate.